Hello, everybody. My name is Zane from Left to Right, and I have with me Iro Omere, who is the Democrat nominee in Texas's 4th Congressional District, and she is with me right now. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, so the first question that I always ask is, why are you running for this congressional seat?
So I'm running for this congressional seat because it's time for change. We have people right now in the currently occupying the seat that does not care about the people of Texas. They don't care about the actual Constitution and make sure that they're doing their part to uphold the Constitution. And I'm here to be able to be that representative that we need moving forward. So I'm running to be able to represent people, make sure that we have access to healthcare, have high impact education, and to make sure that we're able to reform our economy so that we can put people back to work and have them making the money they need to take care of their families.
So, with all of those issues that you just stated, what pieces of legislation would you introduce to get those goals passed?
So the first thing I would start off with would be a rural area economic stimulus package. This package would be able to give rural areas such as Collin County, Grayson County, and the other counties in my district, additional income. Additional funds so they could be able to build hospitals, renew their infrastructure, and be able to address the needs that they need with their when it comes to education. We have a lot of areas that still have schools that were built back before segregation ended. And it lacks the general HVAC, it doesn't have HC units, things like that. So we want to be able to bring those resources directly to our community so they can be able to build and provide those resources so that they can continue to grow.
All right. So if elected, what committees would you like to join in Congress?
So one of the committees I would like to join is the Judicial Committee to be able to make sure we're holding our representatives accountable. I would also like to join the Education Committee so that I can be able to use my past experience to directly speak to the needs of educators and students and families of that. And then another committee that I would like to be a part of would be transport and urban planning so that we can be able to make sure that we are figuring a way that people can be able to move throughout the United States that has the least amount of environmental impact and also allows people to be able to travel to different parts of the country at a lower cost.
All right. And then the final question that I have before we move on to fan questions is, how are you feeling about the state of the race right now? And do you think that you are going to win?
I definitely think I'm going to win. I'm very excited and I'm very hopeful. Right now, people are ready for change. And of course, in Texas, it's easy to just default Texas into a Republican state. But one thing I always like to bring to people's attention is that Texas is really a non-voting state. We rank number 37th out of 50 states when it comes to voter turnout. And a lot of the reasons why people aren't turning out to vote is because they feel like their vote won't count or it won't matter to make any type of change. And two, they haven't been really motivated in the past to be able to, want to come out because it's, as you can see what's going on in the news, they're passing all kinds of regulations that makes it harder for people to turn in mail-in ballots. They don't want to give the necessary accommodations to people who that are limited mobile, that have mobile limitations, and also just with the time frame where a lot of people do work 9-to-5 jobs, and it's just really hard for them to get out to vote with everything they have going on already. So I'm very hopeful because we are coming up with a plan. We're helping people come up with ideas of how they can get around the challenges that have been put in place by our current legislators, and just really encouraging them, knocking on their doors and getting them to want to come out and vote.
All righty. And with that said, the first fan question is, would you consider yourself more progressive or more moderate?
I consider myself pretty much in the middle of the two. Like I consider myself progressive in the fact of wanting to make sure that we have free and open access to voting and protecting our voting rights. I definitely believe that, we need to support people in their medical decisions, regardless of what those may be. And I'm also progressive in the sense that we need to look at our environment and make sure that we are able to protect our environment and put the necessary legislation in place so that, we don't end up killing ourselves with the type of activities that we've been doing that has a negative impact on the environment. I consider myself moderate in the sense that, I understand both sides. I understand where, people who are on the left are coming from, and I also understand where people on the right are coming from. One thing I know is that we all want the same thing. We want a country that we feel safe in. We want a country that is not going to dictate our every single move. And we want a country that is functional and doesn't shut down every year because a bill hasn't been passed to determine how much funding is going to go into it. So in that sense, I am a moderate because I do want a functioning government that has made the plans and is more proactive in their legislation. I'm moderate in the sense that, the government doesn't need to dictate every single part of our lives. Like the government can't be the be all end all for every single situation for each American. It has to be a resource that we can tap into that, allows us to function within our own, lanes. And lastly, I do see myself as a moderate because, when it comes to the economy, we do want to allow people to use their ideas and be able to profit off of them and be able to have this free market that allows people to, spend their money how they see it, but also allows, people who want to go into business to be able to, go into an area regardless of whatever their ideas are. So I do see myself as a progressive, but I do have those moderate views that, is very able to include the different ideologies that people have.
All right. The next question is, you are running in a Republican plus 31 congressional district, according to 538. How will you be able to convince this very Republican district to vote blue?
So let's go back. I'm gonna do a quick history lesson. District 4 used to be blue. It was blue for a very long time. The way it became red was that the gentleman who was the congressman that was elected, he was a Democrat. And then in the middle of his term, he decided he wanted to be a Republican. And then since the early 2000s, it's just been passed on from, the next Republican to the next, right? So even Sam Rayburn, if you look him up, he was a Democrat that he was even the one who pushed the one of the civil rights bills that we are been working on. I mean, that we've been, legislating from since the beginning in the early 60s. So this seat for a very long time, in its 150 years of it being in existence, it's always been a Democratic seat. And it was recently changed into a Republican seat because somebody decided they would want to, switch over to be a Republican. So it never has been originally a Republican seat that was voted that way. Still going back to the voting turnout. The voting turnout has been low in District 4. If you compare it to many other districts, it's not a high voter turnout. And with the new way it's been drawn, a majority of the population comes from the area of Collin County that actually voted for Joe Biden. So yes, with the past history of how people have voted, it has been more Republicans to turn out. But in general, the numbers that show the people who lean Democrat to those who are Republican, they're pretty much equal. And we also, based on the census, have had a huge influx of new residents that are of voting age that haven't registered to vote yet, or they haven't updated their voter registration. And that is some information that has not been accounted for in a lot of the data that's being reported. So yes, according to what a lot of blogs and a lot of, places say that this is a Republican area plus 32, it doesn't really account for the changes that have occurred within the last 3 to 5 years.
I never knew that about congressmen switching parties. Never knew
Yeah,
that.
it's pretty much the congressman right before Ratcliffe, who was the actual first Republican who was elected after the gentleman like switched parties. It was, he literally ran as a Democrat. He won the seat, and then halfway through his last term, he was like, "Oh, I'm gonna be a Republican now." And then it became a Republican
Wow.
seat. And then everybody, just because everybody, the incumbent, the powers that incumbents have. With
Yeah.
the incumbent now being a newly discovered Republican, he endorsed Ratcliffe. Ratcliffe was able to get, because he said, "Hey, go vote for Ratcliffe." People went and voted for him. And then after Ratcliffe got promoted to a executive seat with Donald Trump. And then it opened up his seat. So they just passed it on to another Republican. Because, here in Texas, when a seat becomes open, the governor is able to appoint, and they appointed the current gentleman who is in the seat now.
And that is Pat Fallon, right?
Yes. So yes, he actually was actual elected freshman last year in the 2020 election. So, he's just a newbie too.
The next question that is from a fan is, what are your thoughts on big pharma and corporate greed?
So when it comes to big pharma, I'm very disappointed in the way that they have been able to take advantage of the American people. Knowing that we do have we lead the world when it comes to a lot of diseases that depend on medication to be able to treat it. They have taken advantage by spiking the prices, using, our research that they conduct here in the United States, and then double taxing us on it, making it unaffordable, making it expensive for families to be able to afford things like insulin, high blood pressure medication and things without having the proper healthcare insurance. And even then, it still tends to be on the more expensive side. I do want to see, opportunities where the government can be able to provide these medications at a more affordable cost, and provide a government option to be able to compete with those other companies. Like if people want to buy the prescription at those higher prices, they're more than welcome to do it. But I think to be able to address and mitigate the healthcare crisis that we have in the United States, the government, the federal government specifically, needs to create a division that allows us to be able to sell these products or create a public-private partnership with a company that wants to provide these medication to the general public. When it comes to corporate greed, I also feel like corporate greed is something that we have enabled. And the reason why I say that we have enabled it is just because we have been the ones that have been in control of who gets to run this country. We get to determine who our representatives are. We get to determine who our senators are. We even get to determine our president. And even on the state level, we all get to determine who runs our country and who we're setting up to represent us. And we have just done a poor job in selecting the type of leadership that will be able to stand up against the corporate greed that goes on. So we have enabled it. We've allowed companies to get through these loopholes. We've allowed these companies to go year and year and year without paying taxes. We've also even allowed these companies to still be in operation by doing business with them, knowing what they're doing. So yes, I want to blame the companies for them being greedy and taking advantage, but I also look at us as voters and seeing that we could have done a lot more to stop it, and I want us this year to take ownership and what we can do to make this thing stop. There are people out here, even right now, that are advocating to hold companies accountable and to make companies pay their fair share. We have small businesses across the United States that pay taxes all the time. Startup companies, companies that have one to 10 employees, they're paying their fair share, even though they're not making billions in profits. While on the other hand, there are companies that make trillions in profit and they don't pay anything. And they will literally use the government loopholes as if it's a green card to not pay their share. But at the same time, they also get government contracts. They're taking US dollars, they're taking the taxpayers' dollars, they're using it to fund their companies, and then they still don't give back. So I want to do my thing, do my best to be able to stop this corporate welfare that has been going on for generations. And for us to do that, we all have to be on the same page and to understand that making companies pay their taxes isn't a bad thing. It's not socialism. It's not something that is going to make the American economy crumble. That's not what the issue is. The issue is that if I'm paying taxes, then I expect another entity to pay their fair share of taxes as well.
All right. And then the final question from a fan is, this week we have seen gas prices soar, basically, you could say. And everybody's talking about their plans to lower gas prices. If elected, what are your plans to lower the gas prices?
Listen, my plans for gas prices is that we remove that safety net that oil companies have been using to feel as comfortable in spiking or price gouging us by creating credits that allow people to trade their cars in for electric cars. We have to start looking at different options when it comes to mobility. Funny story today, I even asked, how much does a horse cost? Because I'll just get a horse and we'll old school Wild West it, because like, this isn't the first time prices have spiked up. When I started, and this is just going to age myself, when I first started driving my car, gas was 98 cents a gallon for premium gas.
That's crazy.
So I've seen gas be less than $1 to where now it looks like a college collegiate GPA. And it just can't be like that anymore. And the thing is if gas is limited, and the reason why we're paying so much at the pump is because there's not enough gas, then that means we need to, as people, once again, we need to start looking at our other option. There are electric cars, there are hybrid cars, there are ways to be able to get around it. And there's also opportunities for us to look at being able to create, tax credits for people who trade in their cars. A lot of people are driving old cars. And if we can be able to come up with a program that allows people to trade in their cars, get an electric car, and even incentivize current car companies to build and manufacture electric-based cars so it reduces the cost of gas, that's fine. I know a lot of people will say, oh, well, you're not definitely going to win because you're going against the gas companies, but the gas companies are against us. So it's kind of like, who are we going to stick to? Are we going to stick with each other, Americans? Or are we going to let these gas companies who won't even bring jobs to our country to make sure that we are continuing to grow? And so it kind of what team do you want to be on? And I love, trust me, I have friends that work for Exxon, I have friends that work for Shell. But at the end of the day, we have to we got to look at the facts. These people, when they have the opportunity to help us, they stood against us. They're raising our gas prices close to $1. When you round it up, it's about $1. We've gone up $1 in gas since last year. It's not right. And when when push comes to shove, I'm somebody who's about sticking it to the man. Like if you don't want to do right by us, I'm gonna treat you the way you treat me. And if you don't want to treat us right, then I'm not going to do business with you. I don't do business with companies that don't appreciate my dollars or don't appreciate the resources I'm bringing. And I think that as Americans, we have to start looking at what's important. Is it important to support billionaires who's for the next 10 generations will be okay? Or do we need to start supporting our own families by doing the things that is necessary so we can save our money? So I definitely, right now, if I'm elected, I would definitely push tax credits for people and vouchers that will allow people to trade their cars in and get an electric car. And, that's my idea.
With all of that said, that is my final question. So I would like to thank you so much for doing this with me. I really, really appreciate it.
Definitely. And thank you again so much. It's important that people get a chance to, use their platform to talk about what's important. And being politically engaged is something that's very important because the US Constitution and the founding of our country was based upon the fact that, we were all equal and that we are the government. We control the government. We are their employers. And we have to start acting like it. I want us to all boss up. We boss up by getting registered to vote and actually turning out to vote and knowing who's on your ballot. In Texas, early voting in the general election will begin October 24th. It's important that everybody gets registered by at least the end of the summer. So if you're still trying to figure out what's going on, definitely stop on my website, omereforcongress.com. You can reach out to me. You guys have my email, info@omereforcongress.com. And anything I can do to be able to be a resource or to, hear what you think and hear your ideas, I'm definitely willing to do. And thank you so much again, Zane.
I'll leave the website down below in the description. So if you want to check it out, see some other things that I didn't ask about on what she believes, you can go check that out on there. So thank you very much for doing this with me. And thank you guys for watching, and we will see you next time.
All righty. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.